Greetings, fellow crocheters. Today we're going to be learning how to do my crochet snail shell hat design. And I've had a lot of people asking about a tutorial for it. And if you do like this pattern, please be sure to check out my Ravelry page, which is Bogart Knits 00. Unfortunately, Bogart Knits was already taken. And then check out some of my other patterns that I have on here, and hopefully more to come soon as well. Or you can also like my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Bogart Knits. You can also find me on Instagram as well. To start our project, we're going to be using a bulky yarn here. This is the yarn I've selected for this project. And we're going to start by chaining 5. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and anchor into the first loop with a slip stitch. And then I'm going to chain 1. I just want to get this tail here so that I can crochet it into the project. So chaining 1, and then I'm going to single crochet around my loop 10 times. So 1, 2, 3, 10. So now we can have a look at my circle that we've made here. And we're going to go ahead and anchor into the first loop, the first single crochet that we made, with a slip stitch, a chain 2, and we're going to do 2 double crochets in each single crochet that we've made. So 1 and 2. Oops. And then all the way around, just keep putting 2 double crochets in each of those single crochets that we've already made. Okay, we're getting close to the end, so 2 more in this one. And I'm going to throw 1 more double crochet just at the bottom of where we did that chain stitch of 2 here. And I'm going to go ahead and do a slip stitch to join those 2 ends together. And there we go. 1 completed circle to start off our snail shell hats, and we just got to make 2 of them. And we're set to start on the next part of our snail shell hat. For this part of the snail shell hat, I always use a ribbon yarn. In this case, it's 100% cotton. And we're going to be joining these 2 circles here to start that we've made already. So to start, I'm going to be anchoring my ribbon yarn here. I usually just pull it right through. Here we go. I just pull it through. I've never really had any issues, but you can use your preferred method. This happens to be mine. And then we're going to go ahead and chain 14 across. Okay, so that's what that looks like. We're going to grab our other circle and anchor it into that circle, preferably where the tail is. It doesn't have to be perfect, just somewhere in that vicinity. And I'm going to anchor it in here with a slip stitch. And while you're doing this, it's always good to be wary of making sure that the front side of the circles are facing the same direction. Now that I've anchored my yarn, I'm going to chain 1 and do single crochets all the way across. Okay, getting close to the end here. Let's do one more single crochet. And this is what it looks like. Both my circles are facing the same direction. And I'm going to go ahead and do a single crochet here, which is also adding stitches. Every time we do a single crochet in the circle, we're also adding a stitch. So now it's 16 or 15 across instead of 14. So now I'm going to turn it around and do my single crochet in the one that we just created, and then 2 more single crochets but in the back loop. So back loop single crochet and another back loop single crochet. And then for the rest of it, until we get near the end, we're going to be doing back loop double crochets across. Let's grab some more yarn. And when we get to the end, almost got one more here. When I can see that there's 2 more stitches left, I'm going to switch back to single crochets, back loop single crochets in these 2 stitches. 1 and 2. And I'm going to do a standard single crochet into the circle, which is adding another stitch to our row, and it's now 16 across instead of 15. And we just keep doing that every time, and it adds another stitch and makes it bigger slowly. I've also made sure that my circles are both in the same direction. We'll do one more together. So a slip stitch, and I'm turning my project around, and then a standard single crochet in the first loop. And then 2 back loop single crochets. And then double crochet, back loop double crochets across. And now that we've gotten to the last 2 stitches here, we're going to go back to single back loop crochets. So 1 single back loop crochet here, 1 more, and then we're going to go ahead and add a standard single crochet into the circle. We're actually going to switch it up here. So I'm going to do my slip stitch and turn the project around. And we're going to do our single crochet and then our 2 back loop single crochets. And then we're going to do just 3 back loop double crochets. And here we're going to throw in on our next stitch here triple back loop crochets. 1, 2, and we're doing triple back loop crochets across until we can see that there's 5 stitches left. So now that we see that there's 5 stitches left, I'm doing back loop double crochets, 3 of them. And here I'm going to do back loop single crochets, as we've been doing already. And then our standard single crochet into the circle. And now we're flipping it around and we're going to switch it up again now. See here that I am paying attention that this is the outside of the project because both the circles are front facing. So I'm going to do my single crochet and then my back loop single crochets. And then my 3 back loop double crochets. And here I'm actually going to be doing triple back post crochets. So 2 yarns over, and they're going to be back post crochets. So not the loop, the post. So I'm going to grab it from the back. And I'm making sure to do these triple back post crochets only on the outside of the project, which I'm able to tell by looking at which way the circles are facing. You can really see the definition that this technique makes on the outside of the snail shell hat. So now I'm back to my double back loop crochets, 3 of them. And here we're going to do our 2 single back loop crochets. And our standard single crochet into the circle as we have been doing. Now we're going to turn the project around. And here we're going to go back to what we had done on the previous row. So we're going to do a single crochet and then 2 back loop single crochets. And this is the same throughout the project. And then our 3 back loop double crochets. And here when we do our triple crochets, they're just going to be back loop triple crochets. There is no need for front post or back post crochets when you're working the inside of the project. So here I can see I have 5 left, so I'm going to switch back to double back loop crochets. And then our single back loop crochets, 2 of them, 1 and 2. And then our standard single crochet into the circle, adding another stitch to our rows. And we continue this technique all the way up. Which creates the ridges along the snail shell hat. As you can see here, we're going to do it again there. So as you can see here, as you keep with that technique of 1 row of triple back loop stitches and the next row of triple back post stitches, it creates this really cool rigid look on the snail shell hat. And I'm going to do one more here together with you guys just to make sure that those who need the extra visual of it get that opportunity. So the magic number in this project is 3. It's 3 single crochets, 3 double crochets, and then you just do all those back post and back loop triple crochets. So since I can clearly see that this is the outside of my project, so I'm going to do triple back post crochets. For those of you who feel they've essentially grasped the concept on how to make the ridges on the snail shell hat, feel free to use the timestamps below to review the next steps in this tutorial. So here I realized I've come to the end of my yarn and I'm going to add in the new yarn, and I just pull it through like so just before the stitch is completed. I put those two strings off to the side and I will tie them together later after I've done a few stitches. I'll go ahead and tie these two ends together now. It's going to make them the same length so they're easier to deal with. And at some point, I will pull those ends into the project and you won't be able to see them. You could also crochet them into the project on your way back. And as we've already said, the beginning is the same. 3 single crochets, 3 double crochets, and then back to triple crochets. In this case, because we're working on the inside of the project, it's going to be back loop triple crochets. Okay, so now I think we have enough rows here, enough ridges in the hat. I usually count to 14 or 15 ridges in my hat. So let's have a look and see what we have here. This photo shows what that kind of looks like. To get about the right sizing, you want to count to 14 or 15 ridges. Okay, so now that we've reached 14 sections is what we settled on for this hat, we are going to start transitioning into the brim of the hat. So we're going to start off our regular 3 single crochets. And then our 3 double crochets. And here we're actually just going to do back post double crochets across, which will help us transition into the band of the hat. And now we see that there's 5 stitches left, so we're just going to do back loop double crochets, 3 of them. Then our back loop single crochets, 2 of them. And then a standard single crochet, and we're going to go right to the end this time. When there's only 1 loop left, we're actually going to join these 2 circles together now, finally. And I'm going to go ahead and join them with a single crochet. You can see how they are now joined together. And then we're going to do single crochets along the circle edge. I'm going to go ahead and join these 2 ends together with a slip stitch. And we're about to transition into a new yarn, so this yarn can be trimmed and crocheted into the project. So now we're going to go ahead and add our new yarn that I've chosen here. I decided to use a combination of two yarns. In this case, I decided to use a sport weight cotton yarn along with my bulky acrylic yarn to give the band of the hat some more durability. I'm going to chain two, and then we're going to be doing double crochets along all the single crochets that are already there. And once I run into my double crochets, I'm going to be doing front post and back post double crochets. It doesn't matter what you start with, just as long as you're consistent. And then once you see that you're back to the single crochets, you're just going to go ahead and do double crochets into all those single crochets. So here I've run into where I've started my double crochets, and I want to turn these into double front post and double back post crochets. So I'm just counting back here to see if I need to start off with a double front post crochet or a double back post crochet. So it looks like I'm starting off with a double back post crochet. When I get up to where I've already started double front post and back post crochets, it should line up perfectly. If you don't get it right the first time, it's pretty easy to go back and start again. So my stitches have lined up, and I'm just going ahead and continuing the front post and back post double crochets all the way around, which creates a nice ribbing along the band of the hat. Now that I have made it to a desired width that I'd like my band to be, I'm going to switch back to my cotton ribbon yarn, and we're going to start working on the brim of the hat. So here I'm going to, basically we're going to be adding one stitch every 2 stitches. So how I do this is I go and I put with double crochets into the holes right after the front post crochet. I do my back post crochet. Then again in the hole just before the front post crochet, but I'm not doing a front post crochet. And then again into the hole right after the front post crochet. I do my back post crochet. And then again in the hole just before the front post crochet. This technique that I use adds 1 stitch every 2 stitches. But again, so into the hole before the back post, and then I go ahead and do my back post crochet, and then a double crochet just into the hole again. But I'm not doing any front post crochets. So now that I've come to the end, I'm going to do my last back post crochet and then one more right beside it like we have been doing. And I'm going to switch now. It's just single crochets. You can see what that looks like. It has a really nice texture. And here I'm just going to switch to single crochets. And all those extra stitches that we added in the last round causes the brim to just kind of happen naturally from here on out. All you got to do is just keep doing single crochets for about 5 rows and it comes out on its own. There's no need to overthink it. You'll just keep adding rows, and eventually you'll notice that brim is just forming all on its own, and you can just, usually between 5 and 6 rows makes a really nice brim for this hat. I myself prefer 5, but on your project you may prefer an extra row. If you'd like a wider brim, the trick would be to add more stitches on the first round in a technique of your choosing. Now here you can see I've added 5 rows. I'm happy with how it looks, and I'm choosing my preferred cast off method. I like to just kind of do a back post into the single crochet just with a slip stitch because I feel like it hides that last stitch really well. So I've done my slip stitch and I'm going to do one more slip stitch. Maybe we'll add one more just to make sure. And now it's on there secure, and I'm going to pull that yarn through some of the loops on the back to hide that end. And that's how I hide my ends in this project. Nothing fancy, just a couple knots, pull it through the loops, and give it a snip, and it's good to go. And here you are. The crochet part of this hat is completed. The only thing left is to stiffen the snail shell part. Not the band, just the snail shell part. You don't want to stiffen the band or the brim. You can do that with your preferred method. I prefer to use a mixture of glue and water, any starching method that you prefer.